I used to believe that villains didn't smile. I used to think corruption wore a mask, a scowl, a trace of guilt, something twitching beneath the surface. But then I met Jason Creed, Senior Vice President of Operations at Fortier Solutions. Golden tie clips, that gelled, thick brown hair, the tan that never faded, teeth too perfect to be real. He was the type who could say, "Great job," and "You're replaceable," in the same breath and make both sound like compliments. I worked in accounts oversight, 3 years deep. I wasn't flashy, no politics, just numbers. Numbers I understood better than anyone else on the floor. And numbers don't lie. They just sit there, waiting. It started with a vendor discrepancy. We had a routine monthly audit of outgoing payments to external service providers. This one stuck out, a 6-figure invoice from a consulting firm I'd never seen before. Thermos Global. I looked through the vendor list. No address, no phone number. The listed contact was just an email. A Gmail address. That was red flag number 1. I brought it up in a report, just a note in the margin, a question. The next morning, Jason was at my desk. "Hey, Noah," he said, all smiles. "Wanted to thank you for catching that. We looked into it. Turns out it was an internal pass-through, completely legit, nothing to worry about." I didn't remember him ever coming to my desk before. But he was charming, disarming. You could drown in that calm voice. He said I was sharp, said the company needed more eyes like mine. And then he told me to focus on different projects moving forward. More people-facing, less number-heavy. That was red flag number 2. I nodded, smiled, but didn't stop looking. Because something about that invoice didn't sit right. And when I searched for Thermos Global online, there was no footprint, no website, no business registry, just a dead link and one cryptic listing in the Panama corporate database. That was red flag number 3. So I started backing things up. Not on company servers, not on my work laptop, on my own encrypted solid-state drive. Every report, every deleted file, every payment trail I found odd. I pulled metadata, pulled PDF originals from cached file versions, reconstructed redlined budget drafts. Every time Jason or his team corrected something, I kept the version before it. I didn't even know what I was building at first, but I knew it would matter. Because the more I looked, the more I found. Dozens of shell companies, one-time payouts, money wired to holding firms in the Caymans, fake invoices for fake trainings, flights listed as strategic partnerships that never happened, internal budget notes that referenced people who didn't exist, and always tied back to Jason. He signed off on everything with phrases like exited and time essential. Payments approved in under 5 minutes. Contractors added after hours, right before quarterly audits, and then removed days later. But it wasn't just money. It was silence. The CFO's assistant mysteriously transferred to another department. The last compliance officer had left without explanation 6 months ago. HR files showed personal reasons, all replaced by people who smiled too much and blinked too little. I brought my concerns to Thomas Becker, the director of compliance. He frowned, scratched his temple, and said, "These are strong allegations, Noah." He asked for my documentation. I gave him 2 spreadsheets, not the full drive, just enough to raise questions. 2 days later, I was called into Jason's office. The walls were glass, wide view of the city. He had jazz playing low from a speaker that looked like a whiskey decanter. "Noah," he said, folding his hands, "we've been reviewing your performance." That's what he called it. Survive, a performance realignment. Said I wasn't a good fit for data review anymore, that I'd do better in logistics. Said it would be less pressure and a chance to recalibrate. It was a demotion, no title change, but the new desk was in the corner next to the janitor's closet. No system access, no budget portals. He told me to take this as a reset. That was red flag number 4, but I didn't fight, because I already had what I needed. He didn't know about the backup drive. He didn't know I had everything. Every fake contractor, every bank routing number, every signature, every PDF, every time-stamped approval he thought was deleted. He didn't know that while he was smiling through that meeting, pretending to offer me a fresh start, I was preparing his ending. And the day I walked into the internal audit office and handed them the drive, the air changed. The manager, Renee Blackwell, opened it, watched the files load. He said nothing for 3 minutes straight. Then, "Where did you get all this?" And I said the only thing that mattered. The truth was never gone, you just stopped looking. And in that moment I knew. Jason Creed was done smiling. I didn't go back to my desk after I gave them the drive. They told me to wait. 15 minutes later, the audit team called in their director. Renee didn't even blink when she shut the blinds and locked the door. She handed me a glass of water, opened the first folder labeled vendor logs, and got to work. I sat across from her and watched the foundation of a career begin to splinter. There were thousands of files, cleanly named, dated, cross-inksed. I'd built the archive over 6 months, every evening from a burner laptop, every file backed up twice. I wasn't just covering my ass. I was building a coffin. Renee had seen plenty of waste, some minor fraud, the occasional padded expense report. But this wasn't a one-time slip. This was institutional rot. "I want you to be very clear," she said after an hour, not looking up. "If what you've brought me is real and verifiable, we're dealing with organized financial crime, large-scale, multi-jurisdictional." I nodded. She opened a folder called Contractor Shells. That was where I stored every ghost vendor Jason had used. Thermos Global, White Pine Holdings, Delta Safety, Prime Shore Logistics. All just names. All non-existent. But the payments were very real. And then she found the offshore transfers. Wires routed through multiple layers of holding accounts, one of them funneled into a numbered Swiss account listed under a proxy firm. The name linked to it? Creed Consulting Group. The arrogance of it. She looked at me then, fully, eyes sharp. "You need to be careful, Noah." I asked what she meant. "This level of fraud doesn't happen without help. He has people protecting him." That's when I realized I wasn't just the whistleblower. I was the threat. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed with a friend across town, parked in their garage, used a prepaid phone to call my family, told them not to answer the door for anyone but me. The next morning, the investigation started. But no one said the word investigation, not out loud. It began with small things. Jason's calendar suddenly froze. He stopped getting invites. HR sent a routine check-in email asking about department expense practices. A couple of project leads were asked to confirm vendor histories. But under the surface, a machine was grinding into motion. 3 days later, I was called into an executive meeting with internal risk, audit, and legal. Jason wasn't there. Instead, the CEO himself sat at the end of the long table, tie off, sleeves rolled up. He didn't offer me a drink, didn't smile. "We're going to ask you some questions," he said. "Answer clearly." I did. I walked them through the timeline, the flagged invoices, the shifting funds, the black holes in accounting that Jason had buried with charm and pressure. They asked if I still had access to the original materials. I told them everything was already on the drive, duplicated, encrypted, verified. They said they'd bring in federal auditors, but I could see it in their eyes. They hadn't known. Jason had wormed his way so deep into the company's trust that no one had ever thought to dig under the surface. He attended charity events, donated to sick employees, once paid out of pocket to cover a coworker's funeral costs. He smiled through every lie. But money leaves fingerprints, and I had them all. By the end of the week, the quiet unraveling turned into chaos. 2 of Jason's closest lieutenants were suspended, one in procurement, one in legal. Someone tried to wipe internal records, but the audit team had already pulled isolated backups. Then they found the messages, email threads between Jason and a foreign banking contact, codenamed invoices, off-record purchase orders, a file simply labeled Tide Plan, detailing how to cover large withdrawals by flooding accounts with internal transfers disguised as employee bonuses. That broke it. On Friday morning, the FBI walked in. No warning. Suits, badges, the works. They went straight to his office. Jason wasn't there. Security footage showed him leaving 15 minutes earlier, calm, coffee in hand. His parking access was deactivated before he reached the garage. They caught him in the elevator. His face didn't change, not even when the cuffs came out. He wasn't there. But I saw the video. When they led him through the lobby, the building froze. People stopped moving. Some stepped aside. Others stared. A few clapped, quietly, as if afraid it was too good to be real. The man who called me out of my depth. The man who praised my future potential while burying my credibility. He walked out in silence. And behind him, everything crumbled. The news broke that night. 40-year executive arrested in massive fraud investigation. His mugshot was all over the evening news. Suddenly, everyone remembered the weird bonuses, the rushed projects, the empty titles, the way people who asked too many questions got reassigned. HR called an all-hands meeting the following Monday. They praised the courage of internal reporting. He didn't say my name. Didn't care. Because I knew, and so did they. The backup drive had spoken. Loud, clear, and nothing Jason Creed said after that could ever drown it out again. The silence after Jason's arrest was worse than the noise that came before it. The office didn't celebrate. No one brought cake or shook my hand. Instead, people walked quieter, spoke in low tones, smiled less. 40-year Solutions had spent years building a polished exterior, and now everyone knew the marble was paper thin. But there was something else in the air now, too. A kind of cold, sterile fear, because Jason hadn't acted alone, and everyone was wondering who else might be next. I went back to my desk, the same corner cubicle next to the janitor's closet. No window, no status. But when I sat down, the silence broke. One by one, people started walking past me. Some nodded, some left folded notes. One guy, a quiet programmer named Kevin I barely knew, dropped a post-it on my desk that simply read, "Saw it too. Didn't know what to do. Thank you." Others weren't as gracious. Anonymous emails hit my inbox. Terse, threatening, all caps garbage. Some accused me of betraying the company. Others hinted I'd ruined families, wrecked lives. A few were worse, ugly, vicious, the kind that made you look over your shoulder walking to your car. I reported them. No one did anything. 40A's leadership had bigger problems now. The federal investigation went deep. Forensic accounting teams swept every corner of the company's books. They dug up decades of Jason's financial manipulations. And he didn't go down alone. 6 more executives were named. 2 in marketing, 1 in payroll. The VP of compliance, Thomas Becker, the same man I had handed my initial spreadsheet to, was arrested for obstruction. Turns out he had deleted early drafts of the willful documents I flagged. The DOJ called it intentional suppression of whistleblower evidence. He cried in the hallway when they took him out. I didn't. By month's end, Fortier's stock plummeted. Clients dropped contracts, vendors pulled out, internal morale was at an all-time low. Emergency restructuring meetings were scheduled, senior leadership resigned in waves, and still, no one officially recognized what I had done. No plaque, no email, no private meeting. Until the morning I was called to the top floor. I had never been up there before. Different elevator. Polished marble, frosted glass walls that hummed with climate-controlled quiet. I was greeted by a woman I didn't recognize. Tailored suit, hard stare. Introduced herself as Ellen Foster, the new chief of risk and recovery. She motioned to a seat and said, "You built a fortress out of truth." Then she slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a contract, a promotion, new position, Senior Integrity Officer, a title they made just for me. My job? To report directly to her, to review every major transaction before it cleared the executive board. No more being buried in logistics, no more being ignored. I said yes, and 2 weeks later, I moved into an office 3 doors down from where Jason's used to be. His nameplate had been scraped off the wall, his framed diplomas tossed in storage. I found one of his cufflinks under the cabinet, gold-plated, smooth, cold. I threw it in the trash. But the job wasn't the reward. The reward came later, when the lawsuits began. Dozens of them, from clients, investors, regulators. Each case cited the audit documents I helped produce. The backup drive. My name was redacted in the legal briefs, but I read every page. I wanted to remember the exact number of people he had screwed over, the exact number of lies he'd buried under fake spreadsheets and manipulated signatures. In one particularly damning lawsuit, a former employee wrote a declaration about being forced to authorize payments under threat of demotion. His last line read, "I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how to stop it. Until someone else did." I printed it, framed it, hung it beside my desk. Still, not everything was over. One night, around 11, long after most had gone home, I found my office door slightly ajar. Nothing was missing, nothing was damaged, but a USB drive had been left on my keyboard. No note. I scanned it on a sandboxed system, no malware, just one folder. Inside was a recording. A surveillance clip. Jason, in the server room, 2 weeks before I was demoted. Camera angle from the far corner. The timestamp matched the same day a vendor file I had been reviewing was suddenly archived and marked inaccessible. He was alone. He entered a password, inserted a flash drive, waited 3 minutes, then wiped the terminal. No one had ever mentioned the footage. I forwarded to Ellen. Within hours, the Justice Department had it in their hands. Weeks later, Jason's plea deal was revoked. He was indicted again, this time for destruction of digital evidence. That added 10 more years to his sentence. I didn't celebrate. I just stared at the screen and felt something I hadn't in a long time. Closure. Because when he demoted me, he smiled, like he had already won. Because when he told me I was out of my depth, he thought I'd drowned. But I didn't. I documented every step, preserved every file, guarded the truth like it was armor. And in the end, the backup drive spoke louder than his power ever could. The numbers never lied. He just never thought I'd be the one reading them. It didn't feel like justice at first. Not the kind you see in movies. There were no cheers, no standing ovations, just paper. So much paper. Reports, affidavits, redacted memos, and thick court transcripts with my evidence highlighted in fluorescent yellow. But the real justice came quietly. It came in the way people started speaking to me, how they stopped avoiding my eyes in the hallway, how the receptionist, once stiff and distant, now smiled when I passed by, how Kevin, the quiet guy from IT, started eating lunch with me every Thursday without needing an invitation. And it came the morning I received a box in the mail. No return address, no handwriting. Inside, a copy of the Corporate Whistleblower Survival Guide with a note tucked inside. One sentence. Thank you for not looking away. There was no signature. I kept the book in my drawer. The company changed, slowly, but tangibly. Gone were the glitzy Friday cocktail parties and hollow pep rallies. In their place came stricter controls, rotated vendor cycles, third-party compliance checks. We lost some clients, but the ones who stayed respected us more. A new culture emerged, quietly built by people who were tired of pretending not to see. I played my part, not in the spotlight, but in the bones of the process, reviewing numbers, flagging patterns, asking hard questions and not backing down when the answers were vague. It turned out integrity wasn't a department. It was a fight, ongoing, quiet, necessary. But Jason didn't disappear from my life entirely. About a year after his sentencing, I got a letter, postmarked from a federal facility in Indiana. Inside was a single page. "You won," it said. "Enjoy the prize. You've earned it. But remember something. No system is clean." That was it. No apology, no denial, just that cryptic little wound of a letter. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because he was wrong. It wasn't about winning. It was about remembering, about not forgetting the weight of those nights I spent wondering if I was crazy, if I was paranoid, if I was about to lose everything because of what I thought I saw. But I wasn't wrong. The numbers didn't lie. The invoices didn't lie. The paper trail, the metadata, the shell accounts, the code-named files, they were the truth hiding in plain sight. A truth that would have stayed buried if I hadn't refused to stop digging. I visited the courtroom once, months later. Not for a hearing, that part was done. Just to sit, to breathe, the space where it all unraveled. Jason's name was etched into the docket board. A relic, a ghost in black print. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel hatred. What I felt was quieter, more final. I had watched him walk into every meeting like he owned the world. Watched him pat backs and laugh in low tones. Always calm, always in control. And when I got too close to the numbers, he'd smiled and tried to bury me. But numbers are fossils. They survive fire. They survive denial. They survive men like Jason Creed. And so did I. That night, I drove home, rolled down the windows, and played a song from a playlist I hadn't touched since the day I was demoted. It was stupid, pop garbage, something cheerful and full of fake drums. But I smiled anyway, because for the first time since this all began, I felt light. I had walked through fire and come out carrying proof, hard, cold, undeniable. And in the end, I didn't need vengeance. I had something better. I had the truth. And the truth had my voice on a backup drive, dated, sealed, immortal. Jason went down. Not with a bang, but with a spreadsheet. With a line item that didn't match. With a name that wasn't real. And with a man he underestimated, a man in a back cubicle with a locked drawer and a mind made of numbers.